I left the ruins haphazardly, stumbling through fog that felt thicker than any mortal shroud, until finally I found what appeared to be an exit, an archway of stone that led back to the peripheral streets of Graven Hollow. For days afterward, I roamed the town in an almost trance-like state, desperate to make sense of the horrors I had witnessed. I kept returning to the mansion and the chapel, searching for clues, for any hint of Marcus or an explanation that would allow me to break free from the grasp of this blighted corner of the world. Each night, my journal filled with erratic entries that chronicled my descent into paranoia. The words bled into one another, a tapestry of frantic scribbles and half-thoughts, attempting to capture a reality that was slipping from my grasp with every passing moment. I eventually realized that Graven Hollow had a perverse form of consciousness. It adapted to every attempt to understand it, to every desperate inquiry. The more I probed its depths, the more it revealed the fragility of my own sanity. I began to doubt whether the town was real at all, or if it was some elaborate manifestation of my fractured mind, born from isolation, desperation, and unspoken regrets. Yet every face I encountered, every whispered warning from a furtive local, confirmed the undeniable truth. Graven Hollow was not a dream. It was an unyielding reality. A reality that existed on the margins of our world where time, memory, and darkness intertwined in perpetual conflict. There came a point when the boundaries between day and night disintegrated entirely. I lost all sense of time. The hours bled together in an endless cycle of dread and despair. I wandered halls that echoed with ghostly laughter, crossed bridges that led to pitiless voids, and stared into pools of inevitable darkness in which the reflection of my own eyes revealed a soul in torment. My attempts to gather a semblance of rationality crumbled before the weight of hidden forces that had taken residence in every stone, every whisper of wind. In one final act of defiance, I decided that I would confront the heart of this darkness directly. I trekked back to the chapel on the hill under the cover of an unnatural twilight, armed only with my journal and a resolve forged by desperation. I stepped into the ruined sanctuary, determined to face the Keeper and reclaim control over my own destiny. Beneath the debris of a forgotten era, I recited every incantation I had managed to piece together from the fragmented diaries, a desperate litany meant to unlock the secrets of salvation. As I spoke, the air grew thick with an indescribable pressure, as if the very act of defiance had summoned the wrath of centuries. The Keeper stirred once more, coalescing in a vortex of unspeakable torment. This time, however, something was different. The entities of Graven Hollow that had haunted my every step seemed to pause, as if awaiting the outcome of this final challenge. In that charged moment, I realized that I was not merely contending with a supernatural force, I was confronting the entirety of the town's tragic legacy. Regret and sorrow intertwined with wrath. I saw in the Keeper's shifting form the faces of those who had once called this cursed place home, their voices echoing with silent accusations and despair. They reminded me that every soul claimed by Graven Hollow was sacrificed to maintain its eternal cycle of suffering, and that Marcus's fate was but one small piece of a vast, unyielding tapestry of misery. For what seemed like an eternity, I parleyed with the dark essence that would not be denied. In that final confrontation, I dared to ask, "What must I do to be free?" The response was a deafening silence, broken only by the relentless pounding of my heart. Then, as the darkness swirled around me, the Keeper's form shifted and a final vision flashed before my eyes. A vision of a map, ancient and unfamiliar, its lines drawn in blood and ink, and at its center, a small circle marked with the words, "No map shows this town." In that instant, I understood the terrible truth. Graven Hollow existed outside the confines of human understanding, a realm where every soul was destined to be eternally lost unless the cycle was broken by an act that defied all mortal expectations. I gathered every ounce of strength within me and recited one final, desperate phrase from the forgotten lore. A promise to remember, to honor the stories of those who had suffered, and to never allow their voices to be erased once more. The storm. Inside, the chapel subsided. The keeper's malevolent gaze softened into an almost sorrowful resignation. For one fleeting second, I felt the oppressive burden of timeless despair lift from my shoulders. I was free, but freedom came at a dreadful price. I staggered out of the chapel, the first pale rays of a new day barely piercing the thick shroud of fog. The town, as if acknowledging that its purpose had been fulfilled, began to fade at the edges. Buildings blurred, streets dissolved, and a cold wind carried the final echoes of a place that had existed only to remind the world that some horrors never truly die. I found myself alone on a deserted stretch of road. Behind me lay Graven Hollow, a town that would continue its spectral vigil in a realm beyond any map, and before me an endless highway leading back into the known world. Yet, as I drove away, that day I could not shake the memories of the town that defied all conventional knowledge. Every time I closed my eyes, I recalled the tortured eyes of Marcus, the sorrowful faces in the stained glass, and the cold touch of the keeper's whispered farewell. I knew that I had been forever marked by Graven Hollow, as though its darkness had seeped into the very marrow of my soul. And though I sought solace in the bright lights of civilization, I could never escape the truth that some parts of our world are best left uncharted, places where maps dare not tread because they are not meant for human eyes. In the years that followed, I became a reluctant wanderer, a collector of lost lore and a chronicler of our world's hidden terrors. I traveled far and wide, driven by a persistent need to understand the unknown, to confront the darkness that resides in all of us. And every time I encountered a forgotten road, a desolate stretch of land with no name, I remembered the promise I made in that forsaken chapel, that I would never, ever let the memory of Graven Hollow fade into obscurity. Its story became part of me, a constant reminder that sometimes the most terrifying truths lie not in monstrous apparitions or blood-curdling screams, but in the quiet, insidious way a town can claim souls and secrets in the liminal space between reality and nightmare. I share my tale with caution for those who would follow in my footsteps. Know that there are places in this world where time stands still, where the ghosts of the past and the echoes of sorrow maintain a vigil over the living. And in those forgotten corners, if you dare to search for truth, you might discover that the map is not the guide. It is merely a suggestion. Once you cross into a realm that no map shows, the boundaries of existence begin to blur, and you are left with nothing but the memories of a horror that will haunt you until your last breath. This is the story of Graven Hollow, the uncertain legacy of a town that defies human understanding. For me, it is a chapter of my life I can never erase, a scar etched deep into my soul. And while I may travel the highways of the world, often guided by the comforting glow of electronic maps and illuminated road signs, I know that somewhere out there exists a realm safe from modern technology, a dark, enduring myth where the only compass is a desperate heartbeat driven by fear. Whenever the fog rolls in on long stretches of road, I sometimes feel a subtle pull, as though the path will eventually lead me back to that accursed place, a place that remains as real as the nightmares that gave birth to it. So heed this account, dear listener. If you ever find yourself straying off the beaten track and coming upon a sign that reads, "Welcome to Graven Hollow," remember that not every town is meant to be mapped, and not every journey leads to salvation. For in the space between the known and the unknown lie secrets that twist the very fabric of our reality, secrets that cling to the souls of those who dare to remember. And if ever you hear your name whispered in the dark, consider it a reminder that some roads, once taken, lead to destinations where light no longer reaches and hope becomes as fleeting as the echoes of a long-forgotten prayer. I drive on now, with the memory of Graven Hollow burning at the back of my mind, an eternal warning etched in every mile traveled. I have learned that every journey holds a risk, that every path taken might lead to realms uncharted by the comfort of modern maps. And though I hope you never encounter such darkness, know that should you, your story too may be written in the silent language of haunted nights and whispered goodbyes. Epilogue. Years have passed since that fateful encounter. I now sit by a window in a modest apartment on the outskirts of a city far removed from the abandoned roads and fog-laden highways of my past. I sometimes revisit the journal of Graven Hollow, turning over the brittle pages as if they might offer a clue to the lingering presence of the town that defied all reason. Each scratch of my pen, each memory of those horrifying days, reminds me that certain terrors never vanish. They only wait in the darkened corners of our minds for us to lose sight of the light. My journey continues, a perpetual pilgrimage through the realms of memory and myth, carrying the weight of a horror that no map